So Christopher, why don't we just jump right in it? What are the 7 Ds?
In general, it was originally called the 6 Ds, and it was coined by Peter Diamandis out of Singularity University. And he wanted to build a conceptual framework around the way certain technologies are developing over time. And the best way to describe this, and the way that Peter originally described it to me as a student and the group that was there, was using Kodak as an example, the Kodak moment. So we begin, the 6 Ds themselves are, first you digitize a technology, so that you can think about that in many different ways, but technically you're exposing it to not only an informational paradigm but a computational paradigm. And then originally when you first come out with something that's digitized, it's on large level, when you're thinking about disruptive innovation, it's not as attractive of what is currently available in the market. So people will point their finger at it, say, this is not going to be good, this is not good at all, and it'll never be good. But what happens when it's exposed to these paradigms, digital and computational, it starts to double in price performance every X amount of time. So, in when the digital camera was invented, it weighed 3.6 kilograms, and it took like 3 minutes to process a picture, and it was 0.01 megapixel. Then we entered this phase, the second phase, which is the second D, which is this deceptive growth phase. So for the digital camera being exposed to computational power and informational power, we're seeing a price performance rate which doubles every 24 to 36 months. So price performance means for the same amount of money, you're getting double the capability.
Gotcha.
And sometimes the price does go down, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So there are double exponentials to be involved. But so think about it. If it's doubling every 2 to 3 years, and it starts at 0.01, how many doublings until you reach what paper and chemicals film can do, which is, you can argue it, but that's between 1 and 5 megapixels on some really expensive equipment. And then some regular disposable cameras is less than that. So it's like going from 0.01 to 0.02 is 1, 0.02 to 0.04 is 2, 04 to 08 is 3, 08 to 0.16 is 4, 0.16 to 0.32 is 5, 32, 64 is 6. So 7 doublings to catch up with what's currently available on the market, which, in terms of 2 to 3 years per doubling, that's 14 to 21 years. So digital camera was invented in 1975. And we started to see this, use case and product market fit for actual digital cameras towards the turn of the last century. So once you hit that point where it's equal to current availability of market products, it's still going to follow that doubling every 2 to 3 years. That's never going to stop. That's going to continue to go as long as there's power. So then that's when you hit this disruptive growth phase, because now it's like, okay, now we've equated to what's available now, but now we're offering product market fit that fits the needs of people much better, because it's more convenient, it's more affordable, you can customize, and you can simplify. So those are the 4 attributes of disruptive innovation. So when you're entering this disruptive growth phase, that's when you hit the S curve. So that's the heel of the S curve, and then you're going on this trajectory that's straight up. So adoption speeds up, the capability speeds up, but then eventually it'll mature, and then what this conceptual framework proves is that another paradigm will take over, and continue that curve.
So another paradigm will occur that replaces, for example, the digital camera, or another paradigm will occur that takes digital cameras to a new level.
Right. So my belief is that, once we're able to, do Neuralink and connecting, your brain to the cloud or whatever, that our eyes will become the cameras. So like the technology itself can only get so good
Right.
because the eyes can only see at a certain hertz.
Right.
So, after you get beyond that point, then it's like, that forces a maturity also, but it also gives this
Right.
concept to what is sight, what is color, can we improve upon that, can we enable people to see infrared and ultraviolet. So there's lots of questions that come from that. Any kind of business that has a scarcity based model.
Explain what it means to build something based on a scarcity model, please.
So in terms of film, it's like, okay, we know that we can produce a certain amount of paper and chemicals per year. We can produce a certain amount of disposable cameras per year, but then we can also offer these, photography classes, or we can offer these photo albums, or we can offer these specific use cases built around scarcity, which means that you can build these offerings around this paper and chemical. But then when you shift it into an abundance type mindset, the issues change, because now it's like people. When we'll get into this with the last Ds, but people are just holding the button down, so they're taking pictures all the time, and it's not costing them any more money to take pictures.
Right.
So it becomes an abundance problem, which means you have 8 of the same photo on 7 different devices, so you need a filter, so that it creates this new brand of this new category of job, which then can help simplify the abundance issues that sprout up. In general, that's the scarcity-based model is the model which most of us know, is that we build product offerings around a certain core, which then offer build on top of each other.
To some degree, I think the scarcity mentality has been kind of maybe a survival mechanism to try and focus human production in a certain direction and make it more efficient by that focusing. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
I definitely would, and then I would definitely say, hierarchy has a lot to do with it. Top down has a lot to do with it. We are starting to see a mix of bottom up, top down, and then completely bottom up, with the open source community.
Yeah.
But and I should have kind of mentioned all of them first.
Please continue on.
So real quick, digitize, deceptive growth, disruptive growth, and then we move into dematerialize, and then demonetize, and then democratize. And then the 7th D, which was brought on by the Singularity University community itself, is decentralize, and we'll get into that. So this disruptive growth phase creates 2 things. It creates disruptive stress and disruptive opportunity. So we saw, companies like Instagram pop up, after we were starting to see all these digital files and digital pictures and and it's similar, but they're able to manage all of this photographic energy, we'll just call it that, around the globe, with 13, at max, before they were acquired by Facebook, they had 13 employees.
Did they really? Just 13?
Yeah, we're talking with Kodak, they had hundreds of thousands of employees.
Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah.
Right. So moving from disruptive to dematerialization, that is the key piece, because we're still seeing this doubling in price performance. Things are getting smaller. Things are getting more vapor-like. So you're able to increase the the use case through digitization and coding, which is another piece of this. And we start to see not only film cameras being dematerialized into digital cameras, but the film itself, the photo albums, the photography classes, camcorders, and so photography and video started to explode in this possible abundance, which was just limited by access to these devices. So the dematerialization piece is key because we take it for granted now, but I'm old enough to know that I needed a camcorder with tapes and batteries, and I needed to buy film and then get it developed, and then buy a photo album, and then buy another, do maintenance on the camera, batteries. So you needed all these different pieces to work, which was built around that scarcity model. Which kind of just went away. All you needed was so first it was batteries and an SD card for digital camera. Now it's just integral into one device.
Exactly.
You don't worry about that. And then even like Instagram companies try to charge you to be able to store photos online, but the open source community has gotten rid of that. So you don't have to pay for things like that. Computational storage, storage and computational power kind of hit a new paradigm when Amazon Web Services introduced their product. But so dematerialization, again, we're starting to see these entire industries be consolidated, into one device. And if you start to think about it in a modular way, which is hardware, it's like, okay, so we have how many things are in this device that I'm using right now? Two-way communication system, video, two-way video. I can do camcorder. I can do pictures. I can do, voice recorder. I can do. There's all these things that this device can do, which was an individual device before, which had, I would argue, trillions of dollars of research and development through time on all these devices over time. So that it's like, and then we can encapsulate that into, over here in America, we sell phones for $1,000, $1,500, but in other places they do a minimum viable product and they give the phones away for free, so that they can get their operating system in the hands of people, which then theoretically can generate ongoing subscriptions and revenues that way. But then data and all this stuff. So that's a viable business model, and I believe open source can take that model over in the future through philanthropy. But so people don't really see this dematerialization piece, but it also happens with physical locations and buildings. It happens with processes and parts of the supply chain, and
give an example of those two. So what would that look like?
So a really good example is what just happened last year. COVID, resulting in people not required to not come to the office.
Gotcha.
So that's resulted in the explosion of things like Zoom. So we're using Zoom to dematerialize the office. That's a good way to think about what's going on right now, and data coming out on that is pretty troubling in regards to commercial real estate.
Did you say troubling, like bad?
Bad, because we have workers saying, even if my boss requires me to go back to work, I'm not going to, because I don't there's this safety and fear associated with going back into a populated place. So, and that might last for a while, long enough for Zoom to be a permanent fixture in more and more business models. So, and then also that, like, what's that doing to Silicon Valley and San Francisco? There's a mass exodus going on right now, because so Silicon Valley's saying, like, oh, you guys can work from home permanently, because they know that the innovation it's actually data showing that it's actually speeding up with virtual work. So there's lots of cognitive blocks that prevent us from seeing that. It's like we all fall into this centralized model, which says we have to,
be
follow.
in be in a certain place in order to get the income that we need and the connections that we need and the process production that we need. And what you're saying is that's right before our eyes, that's being destroyed. And so now I can see what you're saying, where a big company might say, well, hell, why am I spending all this money on leases when I can just have my folks work from home and totally eliminate that line item in my budget? Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying? And so now real
Yeah.
estate people are like, what the hell's going to happen to our income now that businesses are moving out of the traditional building model?
It's gonna hurt, and I'm hoping that decentralized finance can buffer some of that hurt. But that's another conversation altogether, because that's going to be built on corporate debt markets, and then junk REITs, real estate
Yeah,
investment.
investment trusts. Yeah.
Uh, and
Well,
then it's like, and then again, a lot of power and influence revolves around commercial real estate, and that's also going to be uh, debased.
how are these 7Ds applying to business and jobs?
So, and when we started talking about it, you started talking about all the balance sheet for
Yeah.
decision makers in the business, and people willing to move to a cheaper area so that they can have more income that's disposable, because it's like $1,200 for just a bed in San Francisco.
Right.
So this implies a demonetization of the scheme that revolved around centralized innovation and centralized office work. So, um, demonetization is an important piece, because just a quick backtrack to the camera piece, and
Yeah.
I mentioned this before, is like, if I don't have to get film or photo album or film developed or all this other stuff, that's costs that I don't have to make, expenditures I don't have to make to be able to get the same benefit from taking pictures.
Right.
So this is where this zero marginal cost benefit comes into play in regards to these exponentials that we're trying to describe here, because the cost comes down so much, in um, our phones here, that the cost is literally the electricity used to take that picture,
Pretty
that
much.
reduces your battery by that
Exactly.
that. So
Yeah.
there's still a cost, but it's you can't think about the cost of the phone. That's not the cost of the per picture, because some phones are free. So if you think about it that way, then it's just the cost of the electricity, and it will always be that way. That's why it'll never go to zero, but it'll approach zero over time as electricity gets cheaper.
What if the 7Ds apply to electricity production? And so now you have decentralized, dematerialized, demonetized electricity production. Aren't you then looking at, in the same way that people are getting free phones and so their cost of producing a photo can drop to near zero, aren't we also seeing the same thing then happening with electricity itself?
So that's an important piece, because I think it's the most important trend in humanity right now, is to produce abundant energy. And yes, that is true. So if you eliminate that cost from the picture, and I should add in that it's going to be the cost of the information and then the electricity.
Yeah.
And if it's 3D printing, then it's any raw material, which will be
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar in the future.
Yeah.
Um, but so most of the information is going to be open source, so that's going to be free. But if you
Yeah.
want brand names, then you'll have to pay for that information in a 3D print. Um, but I have this thought that if when we unlock abundant energy, um, simultaneously we're going to be able to unlock all of these other abundance that have been locked up because of the cost of energy.
Of
And it's going
energy. Yeah.
to and it's not only going to explode those, but it's going to bring in new possibilities that were majorly energy intensive, like carbon capture and desalination, which are going to unlock a whole slew of other things that are beneficial to life. Um,
Well,
which goes into copiosis,
yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um,
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
right. So that, and I'm sorry I haven't tied it in earlier, but it's like The pace of demonetization across the board is, and it's not, it's not clear unless you really look at it, um, is leading to this situation where we're going to start to see things like the necessities, food and clothing, shelter, education, healthcare, uh, you know, exposed to these decreasing marginal costs,
Hmm.
where all of five of those things can fit into a budget of $5 a day or less,
Yeah.
and that's going to keep going down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So then more and more people across the globe are going to be able to access that. Um, and you might not know this, but South Asia and Africa have the biggest growing mobile phone markets because those devices are being given
That's
away
right.
for
Given
free.
away for free.
But then when you open it up to this open source paradigm, you find ways to explode genius and innovation without as a happy counterforce to this constant data collection scheme that we find ourselves in.
Well, a couple comments. The first one is definitely we are experiencing genius deserts where there are geniuses, but because of the way the economy has, the system, the whole world, civilization has operated, in some countries, the geniuses don't get the opportunity to rise to the surface and have an impact on the world because they're too busy just finding out how to get water from the river or food from the land. And so the 7Ds is going to facilitate kind of like an explosion in these areas like Africa and China, where there are billions of people that are basically subsistence living who will ultimately become no longer subsistence livers and then have the free time that's necessary to exert one's genius by following their passion. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, and this is a kind of a concern I'm expressing, is there is in this 7D process a process whereby the haves get to have more while the have nots get to have more too, but the inequality of that shows up in kind of like the way we're seeing. So as these things become more ubiquitous and democratized or demonetize, those living in, for lack of a better word, richer countries, richer modern country, richer, more developed countries get more benefit than those who don't live in those countries, even though we're seeing the process of these 70s happening everywhere. Would you agree with that? And is that a problem in your mind?
So technically, yes, the 70s do not, right, they do not get rid of inequality. So, but I will add on to that by saying they do amplify the impact of philanthropy by orders of magnitude. Because if you're able to uh, engage in the same amount of giving, but each thing that you're giving towards has a decreasing cost, that means that more people will see the benefit to that. And there's this phrase from Peter Diamandis and the Singularity University folks called the techno philanthropist. So we're starting to see this new breed of philanthropist that is gravitating towards open source and helping multiple uh, people across the globe, transcendent of national borders at the same time. Um, and then on top of that, there's this. We have all of this. When I say explosion of innovation, um, that's when these genius deserts start to interact with the rest of the planet, and then these ideas that are coming out of the desert start to diffuse and meet with other ideas that are coming from the rich world to create
Gotcha.
this brand new innovation that would not only benefit the poor area but mutually benefit the rich area without one accumulating more than the other.
Gotcha.
And then there's this argument I learned in public policy about indigenous rights. And it was about the turmeric root and having monies accumulated, a part of the monies accumulated go back to where the turmeric root in India was originally cultivated from. So I believe that copiosis can be a mechanism to do this because I truly believe that we're going to be able to grow anything anywhere in the world. And
Yeah.
but if we can return benefit to the indigenous area, through our mechanism, then that would provide massive benefit across the globe. So you decentralize inequality that way by getting to the origin.
Got it. Got it.
So the next one is democratization,
Okay.
and this is important to humanity as a whole, because when we're exposed to something new, it triggers something in the brain that releases these thoughts and chemicals, and either you're like, oh, I don't like it, or I do like it, I love this, I want more of
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
So then you know what you want, you know what you don't want. But the more that we can trigger that I do want more of this, the more that I think standard of living and quality of life will increase across the globe. But with these demonetization prerequisite, you're able to do that without affecting an individual's budget, which is key here. So you don't have to pay money. I mean, it's a negligible amount, and we discussed that,
Yeah.
to increase your own standard of living by a notch. And we're going to start to see that more and more and more as, like 3D printing gets down to the submicron level, as artificial intelligence starts to act more like human consciousness, as computational power hits the next paradigm and enables more complex mathematical algorithms to be calculated, which theoretically can add benefit to society. So there's all of this innovation happening at the same time that's converging into this process where um, democratization is the end goal.
You're saying that the democratization and the demonetization will allow people to improve their standard of living. How is that?
So it's that's a good question, and it's
Oh, yeah.
right. So in terms of photo taking, um, when we equate that to democratization, that means that people with access to a phone, first off, are holding the button down. So if it doesn't cost them any additional money to take an additional picture, they're going to take as many as they want to bring their bliss level of utility up to where they want it to be. So and then they
Gotcha.
decide what that is by how many times they. So theoretically, that is a standard of living
It
increase.
is. So let me say that differently. So you're saying that here I am, a poor person, and I can't afford my own photo processing department room, so I have to go to a store to get my photos processed. And part of the pain of going to the store is I have to go to the store. Like I have to leave my house. And another part of it is I have to pay money to get my photos processed. And then I have to buy an album to keep my photos. So all of that's costing me money. So, but with this digitization and demonetization and now the democratization, because I have my camera, my basically my photo processing system in my hand, I can sit at home, fat, dumb, and happy, and take as many pictures as I want. And so my experience of living has become more luxurious in this one little sliver called the enjoyment of photography, kind of, or keeping memories or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
That's a good way to look at it. So in this 670s scheme, it is one thing at a time. But then we'll get into convergence later on,
Yeah,
where we start to see these proliferation of technologies due to convergence.
yeah,
But further on the democratization scheme, um, you know, data shows that in I think it's 2018, over 2.5 trillion photos were taken that were recorded on companies like Instagram and such. So that would not be possible if we were doing paper and chemicals at all,
correct.
right? Because the as soon as we went digital, it went straight up. So
Mm,
there's no way that the supply and demand economics do not hold true when we're talking about digitized stuff.
gotcha.
Because it would have, oh, we don't have enough, so we have to raise the price, which will prevent people from doing it. And that doesn't exist with digitization.
Let's talk economics for a second. I know you have some background in economics. So, um, is economics is economics the field of study only valid in the environment where perceived scarcity exists? And I think the answer to that is yes, because what you're describing with the digitization and demonetization of everything is that suddenly you don't have the supply and demand problem. And so if you don't have the supply and demand problem, there's not a price problem because prices are what control the resource distribution of supply and demand, right? And so how valid is the field of economics? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because the field of economics has a huge impact on society at large. And so
Yes.
are we not, by moving through these 7Ds, are we not making the field of economics irrelevant as we make price irrelevant and we make cost irrelevant?
So technically, what the 7Ds do to the supply and demand graph
Yeah,
are through moving through the process, supply and demand merge into one line, and then they follow a marginal cost curve towards zero.
towards zero,
That's
right.
that's what it looks like, and that does indeed null and void most of the
Economic
research that's
theory.
been done
Yeah,
in the scarcity.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, hang on a second, Chris. Let me turn that economic curve into a practical application. So you said the supply and demand collapse into one line, all moving towards zero. And what that looks like, from what I understand you're saying, what it looks like in a human being's life is you become the supplier and the demander, and there's nothing in between keeping you from getting your supply met or your demand met. Just like with the camera taking pictures, there's no one standing between you taking the picture and you getting the picture that you took,
right,
and it's
because
costing you nothing to really make that happen.
so the closer the price gets to zero, the more quantity you're going to want until you hit your bliss level.
Correct.
So,
Right.
and that's saying anybody can get as much as they want without affecting the ability of anybody to get as much as they want. That's what that's saying.
That's
And that's a,
well said right there. Okay.
so, and we did kind of run up into a wall with the 6Ds when we started talking about, inequality. And this is part of the Singularity University bringing in a solution to inequality, which is decentralization, which is saying let's level the playing field by saying, hey, we as people at the ground level can create these goods and services that will increase our own standard of living and quality of life without you guys. You guys being the power pillars, business, government, religion, nonprofit, and the rest. So, and back to the photographic example, even though um, 2.5 trillion, probably closer to 3-4 trillion now,
Hmm.
photos have been taken. That doesn't mean that power and influence can accumulate around a photography business, and like National Geographic, Getty Images, and other entities that are protected by copyright and patent are good examples of that. So what the open source community says is if it's protected by a patent or a copyright, I don't care about it. I don't care anything about it, whether the technology is good, whether it's beneficial to humanity, don't care. Open source it and then we'll talk. So that is the mentality of people now, saying I don't care. And I believe that I can create a product that's just as good, open
Ah,
source, that
gotcha.
other people that can then participate with and create this festival of the commons. But
Gotcha.
so in general, what we're starting to see through the seventh D of decentralization are these uh, co-op platform initiatives.
Hmm.
This is like a record with me that are
Hmm.
proliferating, saying, hey, let's create our own economic unit which can provide this benefit to society without the help of any of these uh, powerful entities that would protect with patent, so that they can accumulate wealth and power over time.